Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. My name is Leonard Brackett, and today being Friday, I will be your chairman for the Belize Affairs Program number 330. 330. Again, we'd like to welcome you, those of you who will be listening to us live, and hopefully those of you also who will be listening to us later on at your own convenience, tonight or tomorrow or any other day that you choose. Uh, it is my pleasure to present tonight's program. I don't see any of my colleagues in the background yet, so in the interest of time, we're 5 minutes late right now, so I'll just go ahead and kick off the program and follow the same format as we do on our show, the Belizean Affairs Show. And this is show number 330. Thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully, whatever we have to contribute tonight may be of some positive public benefit to Belizeans at home and abroad and others. Uh, the format of our program is that we start with a short prayer, after which we do a short Bible reading, and then we go into our program for the night. So I'll just proceed by bowing my head for a few minutes, say a short prayer. Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, thou who art our Lord and Creator as well, into thy hand we commend ourselves, asking that thou would continue to bless us, guide us, protect us. Please continue to be merciful unto us, thou knowest our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts. Please let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our mind and the contriteness of our heart be acceptable for thee now and always. We pray that thou mayest bless our family members, each and every one of them. Thou knowest them by name and number. Please continue to bless our friends as well, also our extended family members and loved ones. We pray that thou mayest bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership, that thou would also bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership, and that thou would bless the rest of humanity, especially those people who are in war zones, those people who are in tornadoes, hurricane, flooding, earthquake, volcano eruptions, and all manner of pestilence on the face of this earth, loving Father. Please provide for those who have need of food and clothes and shelter, and continue to be merciful unto us. We pray for we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much. I'll just proceed to do a short Bible reading. If you'll be gracious enough to allow me the time to do so. And I'll just pick at random. Let me see right here quickly. I'll pick from the book of Solomon, Songs of Solomon. And I will read, let me see, chapter 2. Chapter 2, verses 1 and 2 reads as follows. I am the rose of Sharon, and the life of the village, of the valleys. As a lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. Verse 3 reads as follows. As the apple tree among the trees of wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. That will be the reading for tonight. Thank you very much for your patience in hearing me reading it. And since I expect to have a long program tonight, I will not demur much more. As a matter of fact, I will not even give a public announcement for tonight because I'm going into this particular program for tonight. I know I'm going in pressed for time. I may not have enough time to complete it all, but nevertheless, I'll try my best. So here we go. Let's rock and roll. In the first instance, I want to read. We've been dealing with some of these. Well, we have a 13th Amendment that is being bantered around in the country, that the government is hell bent on trying to force down the throat of the people without having followed the proper prescripts of the Constitution in order to successfully achieve that objective. And they're just going ahead as a bunch of rascals and scofflaws, you know, acting with disdain and disregard and disrespect for the Constitution that they swore allegiance to after they won the election and was granted the ascension of powers to govern. They took the powers and ran off to do their own thing and to hell with us, the people of the country, turn around and use those powers to victimize us as well. In many ways, but in this particular one that we're talking about here right now, and recently, it's the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of Belize. Well, I would say the proposed, because it's not completed yet. The exercise is not completed. And even after they complete that exercise, I've been warning them, based on the trajectory of their efforts and their records so far, it is my humble opinion as a constitutionalist to have tried to tell them they're apparently intent on bastardizing our Constitution once again with malevolent intents, contrary to constitutional prescripts and what is required of them to govern on behalf of the people. For we, the people, are the real government of the country. They are just our caretakers. But somehow they have gotten into their head that once they are assented the power of governance and they pay a few people to vote for them, they feel like they have bought the election and they own the country as a result. So they proceed as scofflaws to violate our Constitution, violate the laws, and violate people's basic rights. Even though many of them in cabinet are lawyers, by the way, so it's not because they don't know or they shouldn't know. It's just as I've told you before, they're a bunch of scoundrels, okay? And they're not doing these malevolent and malicious stuff or evil stuff because of oversight, omissions, or ignorance. Because if they were ignorant, at least we can say they are dumb ignoramus, okay? The way they're behaving. They are bullying us with our own powers. So then we'll be justified to say they are ignoramus. That is to say they don't know what is right or wrong. They have no regards for what is right or wrong, but they have an interest in achieving an objective that they set out as an agenda to achieve. And whatever else come contrary to that agenda, they dismiss, they destroy, and for all intents and purposes, they disregard. Anyhow, last Friday's constitutional hour, we dealt with, I'll just quickly give a quick overview of what we dealt with last Friday so that we can be in context in terms of what is it that we're going to be dealing with today and why is it that we took it in this kind of sequence. Last Friday, we dealt with the same 13th Amendment, and I pointed out some of the egregious violations that the 13th Amendment intended. That is, to violate Section 2, Subsection 1 of our Constitution, which deals with the supremacy of the law. of the Constitution. They are also intended to violate Section 6, Subsection 1, which deals with equality under the law. Section 11, Subsection 1 is also a target of theirs in violation of this proposed 13th Amendment. And Section 16, under Section 16, Subsection 1, under discrimination or discriminatory practices, they're trying to create policies of state that derogates and violates Section 18, Subsection 1, and many others, as in regards to public emergency under bogus classification, as well as Section 19, Subsection 1, and others for personal safety and treatment. So we dealt with those a little bit more in detail last Friday, so I will not go into those immediately now, because at some future date we'll deal with each of those a bit more extensively, with a bit more supportive information in order to flesh them out a little wider or a little bit better, so people can gain more understanding by repeated exposure as well as additional knowledge, because that's the basis of this particular program on this platform. That is to elucidate or enhance or enlighten our Belizean at home and abroad in terms of what our Constitution is comprised of, what it says, what's intended, and when it is to be able to recognize when it is that it's being violated, and to make sure that at least we know our rights, we know our basic rights, we know our fundamental rights, we know our civil rights, we know our constitutional rights, and our God-given rights, as well as our natural rights. So all these rights, these jackals are intended to try and suppress in order to oppress us. And this is for us to fall on the ground and roll over and pretend or play dead and just let them have their way with us. And I don't subscribe to that as an attitude or as a prospect. I would hang this Constitution around their neck as an albatross until they can successfully achieve their end objective to have it changed. But as I implied a little earlier, even after they have it changed, there's no guarantee that it will not or may not be overturned, because we do have under Section 20, which is where I'm heading for right now, to read that section for you, to continue on, or what I'll say, or teachable moments. Because the Constitution under Section 1 says the Constitution is the supreme law of the country. And if any other law, remember what I explained, other law is being referred to in the Constitution. When it speaks about other law, it is speaking about the laws, not the base of the Constitution itself, but the laws, other laws that the legislator is empowered to make. And they should make laws within the constraints and or the bounds of the Constitution, the framework of the Constitution. They're not authorized to use the power of lawmaking to make bastardized laws, illegal laws, violative laws, unlawful laws, or anything that contravenes the rights of the people of the country. Whenever they go in that direction, they're becoming rogue and acting as scofflaws. So the Constitution says if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the country, then those other law, to the extent of their inconsistencies, are violative of the Constitution and are to be considered and or ruled by the court of jurisdiction as being null and void. We only have one constitution at a time. So for the last few months, we have been speaking about our government having this malignant attitude of trying to oppress the people. And when those who are aggrieved or offended or hurt get a chance to go to the court for judicial review and then have the court strike down those bogus laws that these jackals create. I don't see any of my panelists in the background as yet. So we were hoping to have a special guest tonight as well as our other two regular panelist member. And while I'm carrying on rattling away with the program every once in a while, I got to quit and look down. I see one person at least trying to come in the background apparently. So I have to be attentive to that and, just don't have them sitting in the background for too long. So please pardon that every once in a while you may hear me disjoint the program. And I have with us tonight, one of our senior panelists and senior engineer as well, who always helps us with our section of the program that relates to providing evidence or videos to back up what we are talking about in many instances, as well as to have some of these things that we talk about to have other people say the same thing in their own words. That is to say, it is not us only that are saying what we're saying. We have individuals who we're quoting and who we're saying these things about, and every once in a while we catch them telling on themselves as well as on each other. And so here, let me, for a few minutes before I proceed any further, turn the program over to my colleague and co-host, Mr. Gregory Brackett. Good evening, sir. Could you identify yourself and give your preliminary?
Thank you,
Greg,
Mr. Chairman. Good night
you're
to you
welcome,
and the
sir.
people at home and
Thank you.
abroad. Thanking you for tuning in to this 330th episode of Belizean Affair. I go back to you, Mr. Chairman, to
Uh,
proceed.
Thank you very much, Greg, for your kindness in accompanying us tonight and making yourself available to help us with this process. I want to go to section 20. Okay, I thought that's where I was just now. I kind of moved on a little quicker than I needed to. Okay, there we go. Greg, what I was doing a little earlier before you came on, I was prefacing what my intent for the program was tonight to the public, and I took them back to what we had done last Friday night, in particular in regards to the 13th Amendment, which we have been beating on quite a bit recently. And I tried to point to the public that tonight's program would continue that, as well as some other additional pieces, constitutional matters that needs to be addressed in the same context. That is that we have these scofflaw jackals that are trying to ram this stuff down the people's throat, and they should know better because many of them are lawyers, but that because our Belizean people are not too familiar with the Constitution and what it says and what powers are reserved to the people, that they, the politicians, cannot just arbitrarily and capriciously exercising their own because they don't have those powers invested in them or authorized to them. Uh, I had gotten to the point where I had commented about the derogation of rights that they were doing, and that under Section 2, the Constitution uh, demands that people in the country, both governance, individual, as well as the population, that we abide by the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, and that even the legislators don't have to make laws within the context of the boundaries of the land of the Constitution. And they're intending to try and violate some of our constitution, section 3 all the way through 19 as well, inclusive. And I was about to start the program by reading section 20 of the constitution, and so I'll proceed then, having brought you up as far as I had gotten, no? Just so you're not too
Go ahead,
far.
sir.
Okay, sir, I'll proceed. Uh, section 20 of the constitution says, if any person alleges that any of the provisions of section 3 to 19 inclusive of this constitution has been or is being or is likely to be contravened in relations to him or her, the person, or in the case of a person who is detained, any other person alleges such a contravention in relations to the detainee, for example, or the detained person, then, without prejudice to any other action with respect to the same matter, which is lawfully available, that person or that other person, as is alleged by the other person, may apply to the Supreme Court for redress. That is a lawful constitutional right vested in us according to Section 20. Section 20, subsection 2 reads as follows. It says, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction in regards to, for example, under paragraph A, to hear, to hear and determine any application made to it by any person in pursuance of subsection 1 above, which I read, of this section. And also under paragraph B, it says to determine any question arising in the case of any person which is referred to in pursuance of subsection 3 of this section, which we'll get to in a second, as well as, and may make that is the Supreme Court, okay, may make such determination and orders or issue such writ and give such directions as it may consider appropriate for the purposes of uh, enforcing or securing the enforcement of any of the provisions of Section 3 all the way through Section 19 inclusive of this Constitution. Under subsection 3 of Section 20, it says, if any if any proceedings in any court other than the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court or a court of or a court of martial or a court martial, for example, any question arises as to as to the Constitution or, as to the contravention, I'm sorry, I misread, not Constitution, as to the contravention of any of the provisions of Section 3 all the way through Section 19, which is where our fundamental rights are listed, inclusive of this Constitution, the person presiding in that court as the judge may and shall, if any party in his opinion, any party in the proceedings so requests, refers the questions to the Supreme Court, unless in his opinion The raising of that question is merely frivolous or vexatious. That is, that the court has the authority to determine whether or not the case that you bring, first of all, you have the jurisdiction and the authority vested in it by this constitution to hear your case. And if anybody brings a case that is not worthy or is vexatious, just I mean, they just bring a case for bringing a case sake, the judge also has the right and the authority to speak to the fact that the case may not have what we would call merits. Okay? But if a case has merits, then that case ought to be heard. It says may and shall. Not only may, but shall. It's a direct command. It's a mandamus from the people of the country. Under Section 4, it says any person aggrieved by any determination of the Supreme Court under this section may appeal therefrom to the Court of Appeal, as in the case of Mr. Jeremy Enriquez recently won an appellate court ruling against a sitting judge, one of whom we had been speaking about because of his nefarious and unethical conduct. His behavior was such that we had to take him to task. In most instances, it shouldn't fall on our shoulder to be taking a Supreme Court judge to public task for nefarious conduct and breach of their fidelity to the Constitution, as well as their judicial practices. They should never find themselves or put themselves in any such situation. But we couldn't bring him to heel, but we were able to speak to his shortcomings. And Mr. Enriquez had a good enough temperament and support to have been able to take his appeal to the appellate court. And thank God he was successful in that endeavor, and the appellate court threw out 20 odd rulings that same previous judge, and I'll call his damn name because he's so outrageous, Judge Honduras, okay, had tried to penalize Mr. Enriquez because Mr. Enriquez, they caught him lying on the bench while he was sitting on the bench dealing with Mr. Enriquez's case. Okay? He turned around and tried to make bogus rulings without a hearing, only to try and establish records that would have impugned Mr. Enriquez's possibility for being able to sustain his complaint against Judge Honduras. But like I said before, it is easy for our government to be able to suborn our magistrate court and our Supreme Court, now being called and referred to as the High Court. It is easier for our local government officials to play fast and loose because they have a contract over these people ahead, these judges ahead, and to have these judges rule not according to law, which is how they're supposed to rule, but for them to rule according to what the government want the case to turn out to be, which, for all intent and purpose, would be a bastardization of our Constitution and an irregular, unethical move and a subordination of the powers of the court or the judiciary, which is an equal branch of the three-branch government that we have in the country. The Supreme Court should be able to hold its own as regards to being the vanguard of the Constitution and not suborn the Constitution to the will of the government for bastardization and taking advantage of the very population that the government is entrusted to govern on behalf of. So I'm very, very happy that the appellate court, as I had mentioned before, is not that easily suborned And if we have a problem with the appellate court, we also have another opportunity at having our rights redressed, which is to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of jurisdiction. So now it is on the government side now to determine whether or not the appellate court is going to be upheld or sustained. And I'm quite sure that if they take that same matter to C, to the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, they would have lost too. That is part of the reason why they didn't want to take the previous case about the SOEs then, state of emergencies, for an appellate review, because they would have lost. Many of them are lawyers, and they know as much as I know on what we advocate and say on this program. We have been saying before that they were wrong in behaving like that, and that if that matter gets reviewed in court, they would lose. Uh, I need to read a few more pieces. It's quite a bit of reading that I have to do, and I don't know if I should just go ahead and let you come in, Greg, for a comment or two, if you so wish, or you want me to read a little bit further. Or, uh,
Go ahead,
Greg?
sir.
Okay. I was just making sure that I'm not, boring you with these things, because I'm reading these things for the public benefit, right? Not for yourself or for me, because we already had discussed these matters over and over and over, but I'm trying to discuss it in a way that people can grasp the context of what we have been talking about in light of what is happening in the court itself. So therefore, while we may have this knowledge in our head and think we understand and know what we're talking about, I'm just trying to give the benefit to the public to hear it and to hear us expound on it. Um, I'll read section 3. If any proceedings in any court other than the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court or a court martial, for example, any question arises as to the contravention of any of the provisions of section 3 through 19 inclusive of this constitution, the person presiding in that court may and shall, if any party to the proceedings so requests, that is, let's say, for example, if there's a court martial of a particular individual, right, in one of the, let's say, one of the military person or one of the people from the police or maybe from the Coast Guard, if they are aggrieved or they want, in addition to the court martial, they feel like they didn't get justice, they have a right to request the Supreme Court to review their case. That's basically what this particular um, section 3 was referring to, right? Because they also have their they have rights under the Constitution for their own rights in section 3 all the way to 19, and then they also have what you call rights when they are being judged by their own peer groups in terms of some issues not going to regular court but are being dealt with by special court martial groups or special internal um, I forgot what they call them. But anyhow, enough of that, because like I said, it's quite a bit of reading and I can't just comment or expand over realize on each and every one. So I need to be able to make some forward progress and stop belaboring. Section 4 says, any person aggrieved by any determination of the Supreme Court under this section may appeal therefrom to the courts of appeal, which, like I said earlier, was what Mr. Um, Enriquez did and was successful at that. And so we're very glad for that. Section 5 reads as follows. Where any question is referred to the Supreme Court in pursuance of subsection 3 of this section, the Supreme Court shall give its decision upon the question, and the court in which the question arose shall dispose of that case or of the case in accordance with that decision, or if that decision is the subject of an appeal, for example, they then can appeal to the Court of Appeal or to the Caribbean Court of Justice, as I previously had mentioned, in accordance with the decision of the Court of Appeal, or, as the case may be, of Caribbean Court of Justice. I'll not elaborate on that. I'll just let that stand as read, and I'll just read one more and then turn to my next panelist to uh, give us some additional elucidation. He's very experienced and knowledgeable in these matters. He does research as well for many other major law firms, so he comes well equipped and versed in terms of the ability to be able to speak to some of these things and elucidate those further. I'll just go ahead and read section 6, subsection 6 of section 20, which is where we're taking the reading from tonight, at least this portion of it. Notwithstanding the validity of any law under section 9.2 or 10.3 or 11.5 or 12.2 or 13.2 or 16.4d of this Constitution, any act or things done under the authority of any law shall be unlawful if such an act or thing is shown not to be reasonable required in the actual circumstances in which it is done. And I'll like to stop at that particular ending of subsection 6 and give a small elaboration to contextualize what subsection 6 is referring to there. For example, this same 13th Amendment, if they ever get it implemented, would be violative of all those sections that I had pointed out when I first started the program. And this particular subsection is speaking to that those same items. That is, that if any of those are contravened, as had happened in the case where those gentlemen had won their case at the Supreme Court, because the judge found that what the government had alleged as the basis for implementing those bogus SOEs that we were telling them were bogus, they did not meet the threshold. And for that reason, then, as stipulated here under section 6, I'll read the last part of it just for contextual purposes again. The authority of such law shall be unlawful. So even though it is a law that they create, the fact that they create a bogus law makes that bogus law be unlawful. It's a violation of the Constitution, and it violates the fundamental rights of individuals. So any such law, even while they're contemplating making another one now under Amendment 13, even before they get to the end of the story of writing it down and putting it in motion and voting for it and go through all the motions, at the end of the day, the court has the right and the original jurisdiction to rule it as being unlawful, null, and void. I yield back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome,
But
sir.
just to clarify what you were saying, the Belize Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, protects itself. Now, when the legislator goes to make laws, the laws that the legislators are making has to be in conformity with Section 2 of the Belize Constitution. If not, it will be inconsistent and it will be deemed as null and void. No, the Constitution of Belize is the supreme law of the land. But how do you know through the separation of powers that justice is being carried out by the executive, by the legislator? Because when they go to make law, they should each work in separation. And the first thing that comes is the supreme law of the land, the Constitution. Two, justice. And then three, equality. These things must work together. So whenever a government is making any laws that violate these, especially laws like the 13th Amendment to bar individual from judicial review, it is deemed inconsistent with the Constitution and must be null and void. Now, you might ask why I'm saying this, but I'm saying this to tell you that under Section 20, the courts are the guardians of the Constitution, and they are the ones who should protect our fundamental rights. They are the ones that must keep the government in a check and balance so that they do not overstep their bounds. But to
Mhm.
let you further understand what I'm saying, here is a short video to explain it.
Enlightenment awaits, and it's just a flash away. What's the enlightening question of the day?
Judicial review lets courts check if laws or government actions follow the Constitution. If a law breaks constitutional rules, courts can declare it invalid. This power protects our rights and keeps the balance between government branches, making sure none overstep their limits. Simply put, judicial review is a crucial guardian that keeps the Constitution as the supreme law of the land.
So there you go, people at home and abroad. That is what judicial review does. It protects the Constitution and protects our fundamental right. Because as a democratic country, the people of Belize is the one with the power. They have never given up the power that they have under national security. And if you read your constitution, you will see where it says the people wanted a democratic country. The people wanted the right to vote in our government. So the check and balance for power is with the people. I go back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brackett, for your elucidation, your clarification, and your further expounding, as well as presenting that video so people can grasp that it is not only what we are trying to say out of our side pocket or we back pocket or we leave fabs, no? These things that we're speaking to, for those who deal with them, myself as a constitutionalist, you as a law review uh, overview or research person, with the background that you have and the experience that you bring to the table, the Belizeans are being afforded on our particular platform a hell of a lot of expensive information that they would probably have to go to law school to get, and or pay a lawyer to volunteer to inform them on. We are volunteering to do this free of cost. All we are asking of you is to contribute your time to listen to what we have to say, because we think that is essential for somebody to say it to you so you can learn and know. because we know that not everybody in Belize is a lawyer. We know that not all Belizeans understand legal process, procedures, practices, protocol, and precedents. And we also know that lawyers go to school to study law in order to make a living, which is why most people are not aware of these things. But not being aware of them doesn't stop you from getting hurt, because we have a cabal of malignant individuals trying to bamboozle us and to abuse us, or I would say more like disabuse of us of our rights. And sometimes I question, why is it that they have to go to that extreme when there's no justification for it in the first place? Because people vote for them voluntarily. Well, of course, there are a few of them who they pay. But in general, most of the people vote for these guys and these politicians with a free conscience and a hope and expectations that they will do right by the people and the country. But unfortunately, it is just a hope on our behalf, because from before independence until today day that we're having this conversation, we have not been successful and lucky enough to get the people with the kind of mindset and the kind of ethics and morals that we're searching for every time we vote in a new crop of leaders. They turned around and they did the same thing that the previous ones did, and sometimes even worse, because they see that the previous ones get away with what they did, and therefore they feel like, okay, they should be allowed to get away with what they do as well. And because there's nobody to have them in check and balance, like, for example, like a UNCAC, because they're not going to prosecute themselves or each other. So while they're laughing to the bank, we, the people, are getting played and getting hurt. These bogus laws that they make, as for example, the 13th Amendment that they're proposing, is going to hurt a lot of people before that law gets reviewed. Most of the people it's going to hurt are people that don't have any money to get a lawyer to go and fight on their behalf so that they can put the government in check and or get some compensation back for the government for the time that they lose having been picked up and put in prison sometime with no justification or no legal basis. But let me stick to the program, okay? I'm getting a little emotional, and there's a lot of reading to do, because we have deferred a lot of this stuff that we wanted to do from long before now, and we're only now getting around to it. And while we're dealing with this, there's other things coming, because we also have the major constitutional overhaul that they're doing that we also have to address and try to educate or elucidate the people on. Okay? And only the people can save the people, because it's only the people who vote will be able to determine whether or not they want to have these scoundrels continue to treat them the way they're currently treating them. But if people don't know that they're being bamboozled and they're being lied to, besides being taken advantage of, all they know is that they're being taken advantage of, but they don't know how to figure out, the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is one of knowledge. It's being afforded to you here free of cost. Spend your valuable time, which is worth money as well. Get the input, brainstorm it, get a copy of the Constitution, review it on your own timing. Allow yourself to be capable of defending yourself or helping to defend yourself. Stop floating along on the top of the water like garbage, and let people treat you like garbage. You don't deserve that. I'll proceed further, Greg, by taking on subsection 7 of section 20, which
Go ahead, sir.
reads as follows. The Supreme Court shall have such powers, in addition to those conferred by this Constitution, as may be afforded on it by the National Assembly for the purposes of enabling it, being the Supreme Court, more effectively to exercise the judicial the jurisdiction, the jurisdictions conferred on it by this section. I'll go and read section 8, which follows. It says, the Chief Justice may make rules with respect to the practices and procedures of the Supreme Court in relation to the jurisdictions and powers conferred on it, the Supreme Court, in this case, now being called the Appellate Court, by or under this section, including rules with respect to the time within which applications may be brought and reference shall be made to the Supreme Court. That is that the Supreme Court is empowered with the authority vested in the Constitution for it to be a third and co-equal branch of government. It is only the Supreme Court and or the judiciary, as a matter of fact, not only just the Supreme Court, but the Magistrate Court, the Supreme Court, which is one and the same as the now being called the High Court, and also the Appellate Court, as well as the final Regional Court of Jurisdiction, which comprises the judiciary, as well as all the members, of the court who are called to the bar, like the lawyers and all the other ancillary support organizations. Okay. Besides this section 20, besides section 20, there is section 21, there is section 22. I don't want to get into that section for those pieces right now, because otherwise, because of the length of the program, we're already at 52 minutes, and we only have an hour and a half normally for the program. And like I stipulated in the very beginning of tonight's program, I'm cognizant of the fact that the amount of material we had available and wanting to present would be too much for 1.5 hours, and therefore I would have been running out of time. So for that same reason, then, you understand that I need to skip over some of these particular sections in order to get as far down on the program as I'm able to, while not cutting it all or truncating it all. There's some definitions here about disciplinary laws as regards to what we had spoken about earlier in terms of when I said that if there's a martial law, not a martial law, if there's a case where a police officer is brought up on charges for internal review or BDF or Coast Guard, they have their own internal review organizations. Instead of them taking all the issues to a court and clog up the rest of the court. But sometimes people don't feel that they get proper justice from these organizations, therefore they have a right to also go and seek judicial review to validate and vindicate their fundamental rights. And that's what the earlier part that I was reading relates to. I'd like to skip over those because it's just clarifying, what those forces are, who they are, BDF, Belize Police Department, and, I already spoke to those points generally as a part of the overview. So I think I'll leave that part alone. And then, Greg, I'd like to ask if you have a comment to make on just a little part, the little extra piece that I read just now, because I'm going to, when I move forward now after your comments, I'll be touching base on something else that I really want to get out. I'd alluded to earlier. And so I'm going to be switching. Can I give you the floor so you can make whatever comments you have to make in that context? Greg? Greg?
Yes, sir.
Do you care to make a comment, or before I'm about to change the program to a different section, and I'd just like to ask if you care to make a comment before I move on, no?
Okay, sir. Before you move on, just to finish from where we were, I want to show the people at home and abroad what we were speaking about when we are talking about the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And as we were seeing here in Belizean affair about executive power and the country not being run in separation of power, I want you to listen to this comment by our Prime Minister.
I think that was something that was expected from the ruling. But I think it's important to clarify. And I think some people in the media try to make a big deal out of nothing. When you're in my position and there's a crisis, you have to make decisions. You can't wait to call a cabinet meeting or go to a house meeting. We had an issue. The roads was blocked. We need to open BSI. I spoke to the people from BSI. And then I said, what if we were to give them this indemnity? Because BSFA was already worried because they already heard that BSI was going to sue them. So I told them, listen, end the strike, move the trucks, we're going to give you an indemnity. BSI had already assured me that they have no interest in suing BSCFA to get monies. So afterwards, when everything was calm, when they were calm, everything calmed down, and they decided, as a management, as a strategy, to go to court so that they could get a ruling, so that there can be a precedent set. It was never about the money. So they got the ruling. BSI has assured us. He assured our Deputy Minister of State. I've not met with them formally, but they have assured us that they have no interest in collecting money. They wanted a ruling. So now in the future, should any other association or for any company, they go and do these illegal strikes, now they know that they could go to court. Now, obviously, and I've made it very clear to BSCFA after that if they do any kind of illegal actions, they cannot expect the government to be covering them.
So no taxpayer monies will be spent during this ruling?
As far as I know, no. They will not. As far as I know, they've been assuring us that they have no interest in collecting that money. All they wanted was a ruling so that there can be a precedent set in the courts of Belize.
Now, can you imagine this? He is doing an action in an indemnity that would have cost taxpayers. And now you hear him speaking about a precedent, meaning the cane farmers can never do that again. So the question becomes, is our Prime Minister for the people of this country, or is he protecting foreign investors, as in the case of Lord Ashcroft? I go back
And
to
other,
you. I go
thank
back
you,
to you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you very much, sir, and thank you again for that elucidated comment, as well as providing the context in which I'm going to make my statement now from the Prime Minister.
But, sir,
I
I
go ahead,
want
go
you,
ahead.
the people at home and abroad, to know that this is unconstitutional. His move was unconstitutional without
Bad,
contacting
bad faith,
Parliament.
bad faith in the
It
first
was
place.
done in bad faith. That is what we call
Power
the
drunk,
use of executive power, which is
power drunk.
unconstitutional, because
Ima- oh,
Parliament
sorry.
does the people's work. The people has the power. That is where he should have gone with that.
What,
I go
what
back
the,
to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. And I'll just elucidate and contextualize, which is what I like to do with the facts, such as our good Prime Minister, before he went abroad, he wanted to have that matter settled. Those people expected him to settle. They had promised that they was going to have an investigation. Okay, they was going to have a commission of inquiry into what is it that BSI was doing to these cañeros. And what is it that BSI was doing to the cañeros is that the cañeros get their land, clear their land, plant then can process, then go into the process of cleaning and can, spray and can, all the expenses, all those moves, cut the can down, truck it to the sugar mill, have it processed by the process people then at BSI and ESR, and then the BSI send it out to be sold, collect the money, take whatever they want out of the money for their overhead, which they declare, and nobody gets to know whether they're right or wrong. And then whatever money is left behind is shared between them again and the cañeros. And the cañeros have been taken out for a ride and taken for food and being taken advantage of. For years, that craziness has been going on. So these people decide they've been trying to negotiate with them and they get nowhere. And they decide, okay, well, the can belong to us. We don't have to give you no can for process. So the government wants the can to be processed because they want the revenue. They want the foreign exchange. They want the revenue out of the people and the money where the people can get. The government still have to go in there and take out taxes out of it. Then these people have to go pay the credit union and then loan and then mortgage for the house and pay money for the truck and for the gas and maintenance. And these people have a life to live. They have a need to have an earning. They don't have a need to have anybody to exploit them like modern day slaves. And there comes the jackal Prime Minister, go to the States, negotiate with these companies, headquarter people, and get himself put in a situation that he shouldn't be in the first place, because he should have, first of all, dealt with the matter at home. But because he's so drunk with power, like I said, he's going to go and suborn the whole powers of the country. His Prime Minister position, his Minister of Finance position, and his position as leader of cabinet, as well as the leader of the House of Representatives. So he suborn the government powers and the legislative powers to these foreign investors who come and take advantage of the people. And he have no word to speak to these investors in terms of trying to look after the interests of his people. So he sells them down the drain, come back to them, and make promises to them, that he's going to give them instead an indemnification. Okay? Just in order for the can, the people who are grant or mill the can, ASR, BSI, okay, sue the can farmers because the can farmers decided, okay, they was going to park their truck on the road and refuse to go give up their can for go mill because they know to get the agreement. And the people that don't want to get in, no understanding about. As a matter of fact, that can process is an agreement between two entities. The cañeros, them who produce the can, and the millers who mill the can. And the money is supposed to be, the cañeros is supposed to be able to have access to an audited report as regards to how much money the can was, the sugar was sold for, how much money was the overhead expense, and how much money is left behind for them to be able to get. And the company refused to let them find or figure that out by not providing them with no kind of documentation. So now they're going to court, get this particular ruling, and they're trying to intimidate the cañeros into delivering their can, or there's no can season. Regardless of what agreement to come to, they have the power over the cañeros. The canneros, they have the cane, they could either stay in the field and rot, or they could come and deliver it and get taken advantage of continuously. That's craziness. And if the canneros don't provide the cane, then these millers, they have the option to get additional land from the government so that they could plant their own cane to run their own factory. In other words, cut out the canneros out the deal. If the canneros don't wish to be a modern slave and be used, misused, and abused by these new modern slave masters, what the hell do we have a government for then? Greg, you have additional comment you want to make on that point, sir, before I move on? I'm not sure if you had finished with your comments in that particular instance, no?
You can go ahead and move on, sir.
Okay. We'll come back to that again because, that's a whole topic that needs to be fleshed out. So, but in the interest of trying to present as much as I can of tonight's program that I had stipulated, we just talk about the Prime Minister being drunk with power and undercutting his very people. And those people live in his division, the division that he actually lives in. And for the last 30 odd years, those people have been supporting him. Which is why I keep saying, how is it that these jackals could have such a conscience? Okay, let me leave the personal homonym alone. Let me just deal with the program as I had it set up. And so I want to go to the Constitution of Belize again and read part 5. I'm going to go back to part 4 after I finish this particular portion here that I'm reading. I'm jumping around. But for context and because I'm trying to get to a particular point or perspective that I'm trying to convey or bring across, and I need the Constitution to speak for itself, or at least provide the words, and then I could read them, Part 5 of the Constitution of Belize, section 36, subsection 1, speaks of the executive of Belize. That is to say, the ones empowered with the authority to advocate and or to manage or govern the country of Belize, which is quite distinct from many other countries. Belize is not a republic. It has a conditional independent status. It has a head of state that the people of the country does not elect of themselves or determine of their own, or have the ability to dispatch and or get rid of at will. Okay? It's like in a republic country, the head of state as a president, the people just can't arbitrarily and capriciously decide one day they just want to get rid of him because he has the powers of state vested in him or her. Whether they got it legally or illegally, it's immaterial in regards to the context of this particular program for tonight. The fact is that they have that authority vested in them. And no minister or prime minister has vested in them any power to overthrow the state and or to remove the head of state from his position. Those roles are reversed. The head of state can remove a prime minister because it is the head of state or the president in the republics, for example, that decide who they're going to appoint as their prime minister. Right? For example, like let's say in France, the president of France determines who his cabinet people are going to be, who his prime minister is going to be. And that head of state in France, Mr. Macron, consult with his prime minister designate to fill out the positions of the different ministers' portfolios. But that prime minister can one day decide, okay, well, you know what? The hell with Mr. Macron. I don't have to listen to what he say. As a matter of fact, I don't just overthrow him. I don't just decide to act in his capacity, arbitrarily and capriciously, regardless of the fact that I'm just the prime minister. It doesn't work like that. Okay. So I hope while I'm having these discussions and these teachable moments that my Belizean people to whom I'm actually addressing these matters, would get the understanding or the context of what is it I'm talking about and how is it that it works. Because not knowing how these things work doesn't mean that it's not going to affect you. Okay? But knowing how it works, at least you can have a little sense of awareness, and you can at least be in a position to know when you're being bamboozled and when you can actually exercise your powers that are still vested in you, because the Constitution did not give all the powers to the state. Some powers are still reserved to you, the population of the country, to whom the government have to come on bending knees with a referendum to ask you to let them exercise certain powers. Most people in Belize don't really understand that that's the case. Okay? Some people do. Some people have a faint idea. Some others understand exactly what the facts are. But they collude with the government to bamboozle the people into believing that whatever the government does or says should be accepted as the law of the land, when in fact that's not the case. I'll read. I'm running out of time, by the way. Well, I'll read part 5, like I said, under the title of the executive. Section 36 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1 reads as follows: the executive authority of Belize is vested in Her Majesty. Open bracket. As per my clarification, open bracket, which is not there, and I would add inside that bracket, before I close it, His Majesty. Because when it says Her Majesty here, it's referring to the now deceased Queen of England. And we now know that since she died, her son has ascended to the throne, or was ascended to the throne, or ascended to the throne. So for all intents and purposes, even though it is not written here in the Constitution, that is what we are supposed to understand is the case. That is that the current head of state is the person that inherited that position. Under section 2 of that same, under subsection 2 of that same section 36, it goes on to read: subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of Her Majesty, open bracket, His Majesty, close bracket, by the Governor General. And that Governor General can exercise that power either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her. Who are these subordinate officers to the Governor General? Who have to come to the Governor General after the election to get assented the powers of governance? Right? They are the winners of the election. So they are subservient, subordinate to the Governor General. Not the other way around, which is how the present politicians, they preach it and teach it to the Belizean people, because they don't have any power unto themselves to assume governance of the state of Belize or the country of Belize, unless they go for ascension and unless they go through the process, procedures, protocols, and or the ascension process, which is for them to swear allegiance to the Constitution of Belize and the country of Belize and its people, and to swear fidelity to that same constitution, and to swear allegiance to the head of state, because it is the emissary of the head of state that assent or gives them that authority to govern, and to whom they are accountable, and to whom she or he, as the Governor General, may require of any Belize government or department accountability for any actions of governance in the country. Most people in Belize don't understand or know that. They really believe we are 100% independent and that somehow or another we are vested with the power to elect a prime minister, as they are now trying to say in their proposed amendments, to become and hold the powers of the Governor General as well as the powers of the head of state. That may yet be a possibility in the future, but as of right now, that's not the case. So stop having about being bamboozled and being lied to and being misguided and being told that the Governor General is just a figurehead, because that is not the reality. It is that figurehead that grants the permission of governance powers to the real figureheads that we have that are lying to us on a daily basis and ripping off with treasury on a daily basis and doing us all the criminal things that they're doing with contempt, which is why I'm so contemptuous of them. And I classify them as real criminal, as being contemptible criminals. Okay? I'll read a small little portion here before I go back to section 30. I just want to read one more little part here from, it says here under subsection, under section 30, under section 36, I'm sorry, and the third portion, which is subsection 3, reads as follows. Nothing in this section shall prevent the National Assembly from conferring functions on persons or authorities other than the Governor General. That is to say, the House or Assembly or the Belize Assembly or the National Assembly confers or have the ability to confer powers and authority on offices to anybody that they so choose, other than the Governor General. Why? Because they are subordinate to the Governor General. They don't authorize the Governor General to do nothing. It is just the opposite. The Governor General authorizes them to do what they want to do if and when they are able to convince her or him as Governor General. Why? Like I read before, the executive authority of Belize is vested in His Majesty or Her Majesty, not in the Prime Minister, unless he gets that authority vested in him, assented to him through the Governor General, who is a subordinate officer of the head of state. And the Prime Minister is a subordinate officer of the Governor General. And the other ministers are subordinate officers to the Prime Minister. I hope that is clear to everyone listening on my voice right now. If it wasn't clear enough before, those are the facts. There's one little thing more here that I want to. Okay, I'll just read 37 and then I'll solicit a comment from you, Greg, before I jump to. I'm running close, very close, but I think I might make it. I'll just read this. I read the whole of 36 just now, and I just want to read this first section, section 1 of by Judge. Section 37, subsection 1, reads as follows. There shall be a Prime Minister of Belize who shall be appointed by the Governor General, by what most people in Belize are told is a figurehead. That figurehead is the one that appoints and gives the authority of governance to the Prime Minister, and who can sack the Prime Minister whenever that individual wants. Most Belizeans don't know that. That's another topic for discussion for another time. Greg, would you care to maybe elucidate or have anything to say in that regard before I go back to the other part?
Before you do, sir,
Go
just
ahead.
to back you up on what you were saying and why it is so important that Belize be run in separation of powers,
That's where I was heading to right now.
because
Go right ahead.
because when we start to give up constitutional amendment like the 13th Amendment,
Uh-huh.
it can be used out of context,
And
and
against us.
any part of government may deem to want to use that power. So let's listen to it.
Can judicial review be limited by a constitutional amendment? The concept of judicial review is a fundamental aspect of the legal system in many countries, particularly in the United States. It allows courts to evaluate the constitutionality of legislative acts and executive actions. This power is rooted in the principle of checks and balances, ensuring that no branch of government exceeds its authority. However, the question arises, can this power be limited through a constitutional amendment? To explore this, it is essential to understand the process of amending the Constitution. In the United States, an amendment can be proposed either by a two-thirds majority in both houses of Congress or by a constitutional convention called for by two-thirds of state legislatures. Once proposed, an amendment must be ratified by three-fourths of the state legislatures or by conventions in three-fourths of the states. Theoretically, this means that if a sufficient consensus exists among lawmakers and the public, it is possible to limit the scope of judicial review through an amendment. For instance, an amendment could specify certain areas of law where judicial review would not apply, or it could establish guidelines for how courts interpret constitutional provisions. However, the practical implications of such an amendment would be significant. Limiting judicial review could undermine the judiciary's role as a guardian of the Constitution. The ability of courts to review actions taken by the legislative and executive branches is crucial for protecting individual rights and maintaining the rule of law. If judicial review were restricted, it could lead to unchecked power by the other branches of government, potentially resulting in legislation that infringes upon civil liberties. Moreover, the history of constitutional amendments suggests that they are often contentious and challenging to achieve. The process requires broad agreement across diverse political and social groups, which can be difficult in a polarized environment. Past attempts to amend the Constitution have faced significant obstacles, indicating that limiting judicial review through this method would not be straightforward. In summary, while it is theoretically possible for a constitutional amendment to limit judicial review, the implications of such a change would be profound. It would require a careful balance between the need for governmental accountability and the protection of individual rights. The debate surrounding this issue reflects broader questions about the role of the judiciary in a democratic society and the importance of safeguarding constitutional principles.
So there you go, Mr. Chairman and people at home and abroad. Back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Greg. You want to make a small comment there, just to give me a second to get to something here quickly, please? So the airtime, we don't lose the airtime, no?
Well, as you were saying, sir, it is important that the people of Belize read up on their constitution and keep track of what the government is doing, because the government of this country is involved in a whole lot of different things. Just recently, we heard about the logging. Now that
Mm-hmm.
logging issue is all over the place, with other minister names being called. And before you find your stuff,
Enrichment and self-enrichment at the government throw and with
before
government
you
assets.
find your stuff, let's listen to it.
Go ahead.
Orange Walk start talking in German, after which a person in English answered the phone. So he handed the phone just like this to the police officer, and the name Minister Mai is on the phone. I said, what? Minister Mai, I didn't have any surprise because he's a agriculture minister, so I didn't have any surprise. But what surprised me was who talked when they handed the officer to the phone. The guy on the phone said, the officer, yes, this is officer such and such. The person on the phone said, yes, this is Karim Musa. I said, what? Karim Musa? Why is he getting involved with this? So, all right, I the officer, the Karim Musa said, officer, stand down. He will deal with it. So I told the officer, signal the officer, tell him I want to talk to him. So the officer said, boss, somebody wants to talk to you. So he gave me the phone. When he gave me the phone, I said, Mr. Karim, I'm very surprised at you. These logs are illegally being cut in Boston and brought out from Star Creek over into here, right? I said, what these officers are doing is the right thing. 3 of them are here in the evening getting bit up by mosquito. You have no right to try to come and stop the officers from doing their job. The officer said even if they have to fire them or relocate them, they will do their job. This morning, my dad went to the station to pick up the officers. The officers say that they cannot come because they got directive from Mr. Karim Musa not to go to that location. So I want to know, what is he benefiting from this too? Or what's the ministers in the north benefiting from this too? Because this is craziness. This is way up, right? I'm very pleased to say that my era rep, Honorable Marconi Leal Jr., came here this morning with us and confronted them. And he says whatever he has to do, he will do. And if he has to arrest them, he will arrest them. We kids. Look at the logs.
So there you go, Mr. Chairman. I go back to you.
Those are, thank you very much, Greg. Those are people in Belize and our listeners understand why is it sometimes that we get so worked up when we talk about these things and we call these guys the names and the titles that befit their conduct, such as jackals, hyenas, vampires, scofflaws. That's all they're about in terms of our governance efforts and issues. Governance is not their primary purpose for existing, much less good governance. It's all about the big hustle. How to appropriate government assets onto themselves or their friends, how to manipulate and move bloated contracts around here, there, and everywhere, how to rip off the treasury, and how to rip off our national assets. You think any money is going into our treasury from these kind of activities like what that young man was talking about there just now? But they don't care. Why? Nobody can bring them to heel or bring them to account. The government is not prosecuting its ministers, and the ministers are sitting in cabinet there and collude among each other about who won't get what and how. It's all about the big hustle. While you have people in the country, let me not go there. I really, my time is running out, and I still have a couple of pieces I wanted us to speak to before I close off, and I don't want to abuse your valuable time. Thank you very much again, Greg, for bringing that to our attention, okay? Because I just hope people pay attention and stop the get bamboozled, but I'm kind of mad right now, okay? I'm mad, but I still need to contain my state of mind and deal with the reality of the fact that I have a program to complete right now. I want to go to the point or the part 7 of the Constitution of Belize, which speaks about the judiciary. Because earlier we were speaking about the judiciary under Section 20 for judicial review of our basic rights, fundamental rights under Section 3 all the way through Section 19, inclusive of the Constitution. And I just want to read part of where the powers of the judiciary come from. Okay? So we go to Section 90A of the Constitution and subsection 1, and it reads as follows. There shall be established in each judicial district of Belize a summary jurisdiction court, which shall have and exercise criminal jurisdiction, and a district court, which shall have and exercise civil jurisdiction. That is to say, you have the magistrate courts to deal with civil matters. No, I'm sorry, to deal with criminal. I'm sorry. Yeah, you have to deal with civil matters. Is the magistrate court, and when there are criminal matters that needs to go to the Supreme Court for higher judicial review, you have the High Court, which we call the Supreme Court. Under Section 93A, subsection 2, reads as follows: the powers and jurisdiction of the summary jurisdiction court and district court shall be such as may from time to time be prescribed by the National Assembly by a law made in that behalf. Of course, you also have the Constitution, right? So remember, when the Constitution says, if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, that other law is referring to these laws that I pointed out earlier, that the legislator have the authority to make. But they have to make those laws within the bounds of the Constitution. Okay? Otherwise, they are null and void. A magistrate shall be appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, and that magistrate shall, subject to any law passed by the National Assembly, of course, if it is constitutional again, which is the question, be a qualified attorney at law in order to practice law and, be a magistrate. A magistrate who is qualified attorney at law shall have security of tenure and subject to any compulsory retirement age for public services may be removed from office only for inability to perform the functions of his office, whether resign from infirmity or mind or body or from any other cause or for misbehavior. This is the part that I wanted to get to, which is under Section 94 and 95. There shall be for Belize a Supreme Court of Judicature and Court of Appeal. 95, subsection 1, reads as follows: the Supreme Court shall have, meaning the Supreme Court and now being called the High Court, shall have unlimited original jurisdiction. I hope most people would understand what that means. And if not, I'll venture to say what it means is that the Supreme Court or the High Court of Belize has unlimited jurisdiction in terms of their ability to hear and render decisions on court matters without any superimposed authority from the House of Representatives, being the legislature or Senate, and or from the executive, being the cabinet, and any other government department who makes their own protocols or process procedures, or practices or authorize laws for management purposes. So the Supreme Court shall have unlimited original jurisdiction to hear and determine any civil or criminal proceedings under any law, and such jurisdictions and powers as may be conferred unto it by this Constitution or any other law. It is only the Supreme Court. It is only not the judiciary that is empowered to determine whether a law is legal, illegal, lawful, unlawful, constitutional, or unconstitutional. That is not the purview of the legislature. So they can make a million or a billion laws if they want, but all those millions or billions of laws, however many they are, has to conform to the Constitution of Belize. Otherwise, to the extent of their inconsistencies, they are null and void. So they can spend the rest of their life making laws. If they make bogus laws, what I always say is that I wish somehow or another that when these guys go and make those bogus laws that they know are bogus or illegal, and people suffer consequences because they're hauling to court because of it, and some of them go to jail and spend jail, sometimes decades in jail, waiting for trial, which is also a separate crime unto itself, that these politicians, somehow or another, should have to suffer some consequences for their dastardly conduct. And I yield to you, Greg. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're at that time. So I would just like to shortly say that I hope the people at home and abroad listening to our show has kind of picked up on what we are trying to do when it comes to speaking about our Constitution and wanting to hold these people accountable for their action. And with that said, sir, I would like to take it back to you as we're over that final mark for you to do your closing.
Thank you very much, Greg, for your comments and your contribution to tonight's program. Made a difference. And I'm hoping that people appreciate your effort in terms of bringing this information to them as well, so that it makes it easier on them not only just to listen to the words that we are uttering or the readings that we're reading from the Constitution. Those who don't have a copy, at least they can see the videos of your presentation and be able to get an idea of what is it that ails us, ails our country, and what we can do to help make a difference in terms of not allowing or letting these people lie to us, disabuse of our rights while they are laughing to the bank, ripping us off, fattening up themselves. They come into office one time in politics. If they become a minister, they become millionaires in that one first term. If they succeed for 2 terms, they become multi-millionaires. If they succeed for 3 terms, they become excessively multi-millionaires. Why? Not because of the salary that they receive or the little perks that they get as, for vehicle maintenance or other maintenance or other services. Because they cut a lot of deal behind the scene with people who have money, and they get a lot of kickback. Plus, they take our assets onto themselves, thousands and thousands of acres of land, empowered into their own accounts and their family and friends' accounts. And then they turn around and sell those lands to foreign investors. They're in cahoots with real estate agents, having people getting killed because they expose their information. And when they're done, they turn around and pretend like, okay, they're also entitled to a retirement bonus. Okay? So they fatten up themselves, they rip up the assets and the resources of the country, and then they complain that there's not enough resource to do the job that is required on behalf of the country. But yet, they promised they were going to put Nkak in place if they ever got elected. They're on their second term now, and you don't hear people out of them about trying to get Nkak in place because Nkak would demand accountability of them and would be in a situation to strip them of some of the ill gains, assets that they're now piling up. So they're not going to checkmate themselves. So for those of us who are looking forward to one day having Nkak come into play and grab some of these guys and do justice to them, we may have to wait probably until we die and come back in our next lifetime. Because these jackals are not about to do that. Anyhow, that's the end of tonight's program. I'm sorry it went a little south or soured or wherever or however. It just galls me to know that we have to be dealing with issues like these when in fact nobody's telling these guys not to help themselves, man. Because all over the world you have a bunch of scoundrels and scamps that are trying to, greedy up themselves. Every country you go, you find one or two or a bunch of other people sticking themselves, their fingers into the honey or the cookie jar, helping themselves. The bad part is that these jackals, they don't have any pity, any mercy, any consideration for the people who give them these opportunities. The least they can do is do the people's business as well. Don't do all the criminal activities to exclusion of the people's business, because the money is always there. If they don't rip it off, like somebody had said before. Anyhow, that's the end of the program for tonight. Thank you, Belizeans at home and abroad, and others who listen to our programs. We have people all the way from Australia. We have in England. We have people, and we are happy to know that we have these individuals who are interested in what we have to say and what we're offering. At least we hold ourselves accountable to make sure that we don't become so emotionally distraught about what's going on to the point that we can't deliver a sensible, lucid enough, or honest enough program. And for giving us that opportunity, we are grateful to you, our listeners. Thank you very much again. God bless. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. Yield back to you, Greg. Take it away from us.
Thank you, sir.